Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Mess. So today we've got a very fun and exciting episode for you guys today because we're taking a look at a recently released ROM hack for Mario Kart Super Circuit, and it is probably the simplest ROM hack that I have ever seen that absolutely does the most in any game imaginable. Because even though Mario Kart Super Circuit is an absolutely fun game on the Game Boy Advance, it suffered from one flaw that seemed to be maybe a programming bug, because even though Nintendo makes incredible games, they're definitely known for making some programming mistakes, especially with stuff like Super Mario 64 where there are a lot of bugs in code that hamper the performance of the game. Now, if you can't tell already, take a look at the cadence on the screen because that doesn't really indicate in the title exactly what's going on. Look at the motion of the backgrounds, look at the motion of that Mode 7 style course and see if you notice anything. I'm not going to leave you hanging for long, but honestly, I'm sure you've noticed by now, it is the fact that both the background as well as the course are refreshing and presenting in 60 frames per second. Because for the longest time, one of these things would actually work in 60 frames per second. The other one was configured to do that, but it would only actually draw to the screen 30 times per second, so you had a frame rate basically mismatched between the background layer and the course in and of itself. And that on original hardware wasn't that noticeable, but when you play this thing on a modern screen, I've always felt a little bit, not motion sick, but honestly just a little irritated by the cadence of how the motion actually occurred. It's such simple changes like this that absolutely make you see this game in a whole new light. And if you're wondering, the patch for this is absolutely minuscule. I think it was around 100 bytes when I looked at it. It basically just changes a few lines of code to make it so that both of the layers are going to refresh at 60 frames per second. And as a filmmaker, there's something that we never do and can't really honestly do. We do not mix frame rates in project. If we're presenting in 24 frames per second, you keep that consistent the entirety of the way. If you're at 60 frames per second, that's where you stay as well. You can't even really drop in a ton of different frame rates on a timeline and expect to have them all to be shown in the way that they would naturally have their cadence be if you're just watching them on a television. So when you end up in a mismatch in something like Mario Kart, it absolutely is something you notice even subconsciously. Think about it this way, go back and imagine all of your playthroughs of this game and think to yourself that it kind of feel a little bit stilted in spots, and leave me a comment down below. Because that honestly is something I always noticed about the game when I played it. It has that Super Nintendo vibe, it has a lot of amazing courses, but of course you get the advanced hardware of the Game Boy Advance compared to the Super Nintendo, and I always really wanted to love this game, but there's also something about it that just never really clicked. It might be the fact that there isn't any elevation in the track, and by something like Mario Kart 64, that's something we all got used to, but it could be the fact that my brain was telling me, at least subconsciously, that something was going on with the game that was a little bit weird, and that obviously again has been completely fixed here. The developer of this anti-batter went in and got everything to run at 60 frames per second, and that's all it really took. And before you leave the comment down below, why am I doing a whole video for one single change? I love talking about the underlying technology and how these things work, and how imagery basically tells your brain whether or not it is working correctly or not, because there's a lot of things that you might not ever notice, at least in your thinking mind, as to being problems, but your brain some way, shape, or form perceives them and can actually take you out of the experience. And I'm guilty of that intentionally on the channel sometimes as well, because I shoot all of my content at 24 frames per second, and anytime I point my camera at a CRT or at a television, you will notice that there's a weird staccato motion to my footage. That's just because I absolutely hate the look of any sort of footage in 60 frames per second as far as cameras are concerned. So even if I am trying to shoot something that is running at 60 frames per second, I'm never actually going to change my own frame rate, and people comment all the time, it looks a little bit weird, but they usually can't put their finger on it. That's exactly what you were getting with something like Mario Kart Super Circuit. Something seemed a little bit off, but no one could really put their finger on it. And you see people like Kaze going through stuff like Super Mario 64 and fixing a lot of the bugs and issues that Nintendo left in code. Nintendo is an incredible developer. They make some amazing games, even if they suit people too much, but they are as likely to make bugs and make mistakes in their code as any other developer, and I'm not sure if that's what was going on here, but it certainly seems like it, because this was basically a free improvement performance-wise. But it's time for soundtrack sample 1, just so I can make you listen to some Mario Kart music, and I'll be right back with a lot more detail. I mean, the Game Boy Advance was never known for having the best audio quality, and a lot of samples definitely sound a little bit low bit rate and a little bit muffled, but I would say in Super Circuit, some of the better music on the console. And that really is the thing about the Game Boy Advance. It's both powerful in some departments and a little bit weak in others. But the reality is, switching the frame rate of the course from 30 frames to 60 frames does not affect the performance of the actual game as far as its frame rate is concerned in any way whatsoever. That means this is a free performance boost. It is doing nothing as far as bogging the game down, which begs the question, why did Nintendo not do this in the first place? Did they not notice that it was running at 30 frames per second? Did they have some flag set or some line of code that was restricting it that they were supposed to take out of the original build and forgot to before they actually manufactured the ROMs? Or did Nintendo just think that that's the way it looked better? I'm sure we're never going to actually get an answer to that question because it's going to be lost to time. But the reality is, just like Super Mario 64, a lot of Nintendo games do have bugs in them, and a lot of times you can get better performance for basically free. And it isn't just a game like Mario Kart right here. There are a ton of different patches out there for games that will get better improvement in performance without any cost whatsoever. Something like Perfect Dark on the N64, there's a patch that runs on stock hardware that gives you like another 8 to 9 frames per second just by fixing some of the code in the background. And the nice thing is, as the years go on, decades in this instance, fan developers learn a lot more about the hardware and they're able to get things out of the actual specs that even the developers, or Nintendo being the manufacturers, couldn't back in the day. And that is basically something that we see across the board as far as actual ROM hacks are concerned. There's just free performance gains to be had in certain titles. Sometimes they are just a couple frames per second, other times, in the instance of Mario Kart here, you get 30 more frames per second on the actual course rotating in real time, and that definitely makes a huge difference in the game. Now, in a situation like this where you're actually getting the results screen, it isn't going to have any fundamental difference whatsoever because nothing's really moving. In scenes where it isn't really moving fast when you're in menus, you would have no idea that this patch is actually even in effect. It's only when you get into the actual races where you see that big difference. And trust me, it doesn't really come across very well in video, but go ahead and play this new version of the game and then play the old version directly afterwards. You will see a massive difference. I could have done a side-by-side comparison, but when it gets compressed it can be a little bit tricky versus being on your actual screen. But this, again, just makes the game that much more fluid. In a game where fluidity matters, this 100% is just a better experience, especially when you're drifting around corners. The actual course rotates quickly, and getting double the frames matters. But one more soundtrack sample just because I love the music and I can make you listen to it, and I'll be right back with just a little bit more. So it definitely has great music, it has great gameplay, and now it has double the frames as far as the course is concerned. And if you do want to patch this game, again, the link is in the description down below. And if you've been having trouble patching things, I do have a tutorial coming up because even though I find it easy, I do see a lot of comments in the comment section with people asking how to patch games or saying they're having issues with it. So maybe this weekend or maybe the weekend afterwards, I will have a tutorial out on how to patch basically any single game out there with all the most popular patch variants as far as the file sizes and types are concerned, because there's more than one option. I think that is tripping some people up, but it's just out of curiosity. Leave me a comment down below and you tell me, do you patch games all the time? Do you try to find pre-patched versions, or are you having any trouble with it? Because recently I've been seeing a lot of comments basically from people saying that they are failing at patching stuff, and that means they're missing out on a ton of fun. Because again, this patch just changes one thing. It gives you 30 extra frames on the cores, but that change just fundamentally makes such a huge difference, and it goes to show that every single ROM hack needs to be new levels, new courses, new music, things like that. Going under the hood and solving a few of the technical deficiencies of a game can absolutely make it feel that much more fun, because it's still Mario Kart, it's still got great courses, it's still got great gameplay, and now it has a great frame rate, getting double the actual frame rate on the cores, and that is definitely something to celebrate. Leave me a comment down below and you tell me what your favorite Mario Kart game is. I would be curious. I've been playing a lot of the new Mario Kart world, but I still think Mario Kart 8 is the best game. But we're done. I'll see you guys next time. Hope you enjoyed the video. Bye bye.